Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. Last week, the Polish Constitutional Court reiterated that European Union bodies must act within the limits of the treaties. This provoked anger amongst representatives of the European Commission and predictions of severe penalties for Poland. However, nations of the European Union are not necessarily enthusiastic about the creation of a European superstate by means of fait accompli. Former Secretary-General of the French Constitutional Council, Jan-Erik Schoettl, found the decision of the Polish judges obvious. During his visit to Kiev, Ukraine, the EU head of Foreign Affairs condemned the ruling of the Polish Constitutional Court and announced severe penalties for Poland for, as he put it, breaching EU law.
The Commission will use all capacities in order to face a situation that could be considered a strong infringement of the European treaties. Because one thing is clear, when you become member of the European Union, you accept the primacy of the European law over the national law. Otherwise, the European Union could not work as a union.
The superiority of national constitution over EU legislation has been advocated by French presidential candidate socialist Arnaud Montebourg, centre-right politician Xavier Bertrand, and former EU Brexit negotiator Michel Barnier. The decision of the Polish Constitutional Tribunal was also supported by far-right leaders Florian Philpott and Marine Le Pen. There is a great deal of such talk, especially in the conservative press in France. However, those governments that are based on the left have a different view. In France, this will be the subject of the presidential campaign. That is, national sovereignty versus the European Union. Let us remember that France suspended its membership of NATO precisely because such an alliance might threaten France's independence. Now, the Union is a much greater threat. In a press release, former Economy Minister Arnaud Montebourg stressed the superiority of French law over European decisions. He added that it was an important decision for Poland to ensure national sovereignty through the law. In turn, Michel Barnier, who is seeking Republican support in the primaries, stressed the need for the legal sovereignty of states. He added that passivity in this matter could lead to other member states leaving the European Union. France shows that there will be a political breakthrough there. The voice of Michel Barnier, read as a warning and a cautionary tale, is particularly significant. It shows that Emmanuel Macron is isolated in his approach to the European Union, and that the absolutization of this institution has ended. In July this year, the European Court of Justice ruled that the Working Time Directive could be applied in relation to the performance of duties by French professional soldiers. The working time of the military would be limited and compensated in the form of overtime. This decision was opposed by the government there. The Court of Justice replied that yes, France rejected this ruling because it could lead to destabilization and even destruction of the French army or the French state budget. That is why most of those politicians running for the presidency of France support Poland. Emmanuel Macron's main opponent, Eric Zemmour, fully supported the Polish government in enforcing the legal order and assessed that it is time to restore the primacy of national legislation over European law in France as well. And now to the eastern border of Poland. The border guard has recorded over 600 attempts to cross illegally into Poland from Belarus and has detained 13 perpetrators who it turns out came from Iraq. The head of the National Defence Ministry, Mariusz Błaszczak, has announced a doubling of the number of soldiers on this border and a draft law under which a barrier will be created to stop growing migration pressure. According to the latest IBRIS poll commissioned by the Rzeczpospolita Daily, over 55% of respondents consider Alexander Lukashenko's regime to be waging a hybrid war against Poland. Only 8% of those surveyed hold the opposite view, and 6% could not provide an answer. The president of the Belarusian House in Warsaw, Aleś Zarembiuk, considers that the situation on the border is very alarming. However, Alexander Lukashenko's regime bears full responsibility for it.
Alexander
Lukashenko does not care about the fate of the people whom he and his services have put at risk of losing their health and freedom. Of course, this is a hybrid war that has been going on for a very long time, not without permission, but rather on Putin's orders. This is how they are testing the Polish state at the hands of Lukashenko. More than 600 attempts to cross the border illegally were recorded yesterday. The Minister of Defence, Mariusz Błaszczak, said that the number of soldiers on the Polish-Belarusian border will be increased. I have made a decision to increase the number of soldiers and more support for the border guard. Footage has hit the web suggesting that children from Michałowo, who were taken to the border with Belarus at the end of September, are in difficult conditions. The border guard points out that it acted in accordance with the decision of their parents, who did not want to apply for international protection in Poland. There is information on social media about the alleged location of these children. This is not true. We cannot see the location and we cannot confirm who is there. We also cannot confirm the information about people who have crossed into Germany. Liberal mainstream media are reporting the issue, taking a pro-immigrant angle. The New York Times covered the crisis on the Polish border, presenting the drama of migrants seeking asylum in Germany. The Daily noted that most Poles support the government's efforts to protect the Polish border. These actions, which are taken by the Polish government, which are taken by the Minister of Internal Affairs and Administration and the Minister of National Defence, are unequivocally positively assessed by various EU agencies and many countries, not only European, but also across the world. On the Polish-Belarusian border, a 2.5-metre high temporary fence is constantly being built, which is already over 130 kilometres long. Parallel to it, military entanglements have been laid. There are also plans to build a permanent barrier. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is a guest of the Visegrad Group meeting in Budapest today. Egypt is one of the strongest countries of the Middle East and is eager to enhance its cooperation with the Central European Four. On the agenda is migration, counter-terrorism and EU-Egypt relations, as well as assistance provided to the ancient superpower. This is Egypt's second participation in the V4 summit since 2017, which reflects the keenness of the two sides to develop relations and discuss various issues of common interest. Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki used the forum to dismiss the media claims about the so-called Polexit. Leaders gathered in Budapest spoke about migration and the prevention of terrorism. External migration is pushing against the borders of the European Union. As a universal group, we very much appreciate the role of Egypt here, and we thank the President for securing the borders for 5 years, and we have heard about the 6 million migrants who are in Egypt. We remember the migrant crisis of 2015. This current one is much more difficult. The Polish Prime Minister said about the pressure he is experiencing at his country's border. This is a situation that the European Union can only solve with the cooperation of external countries, and here Egypt is an ally. The interests of the European Union are equal to the interests of Egypt. We want the European Union to accept the terrorist list drawn up by Egypt's secret service. We thank the countries of the European Union for their help, especially for the 250,000 vaccines for COVID. We especially appreciate the position of Viktor Orban and our friends from Poland, Slovakia and the Czech Republic. Illegal migration is a problem. 6 million people from Africa have arrived in Egypt. We call them guests. We don't have refugee camps, and they live and work just like our citizens. We have not allowed them to go further into Europe. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen went to Ukraine for a summit in Kiev and announced that Ukraine is to remain a gas transit country. Ukraine signed the Open Skies Treaty with the European Union that will allow budget airlines to operate in the country, and the European Union committed to an investment package worth up to 6.5 billion euros. The European Union is looking at different ways to ensure Ukraine has a steady supply of natural gas this winter and is not exposed to any reduction in Russian output, the bloc's chief executive said.
The second is, of course, gas supply security. That would, for example, include indeed a reverse flow, if necessary, from the European Union, for example, through Slovakia, who is willing to step up in this topic to secure gas supply also for Ukraine, if necessary. And the third topic would be to look into a strategic reserve, so the topic of storage. Overall, what we are working on together and developing with the different scenarios is independence, energy independence. That is for Ukraine as vital as for the European Union.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said reverse flows could come from Slovakia, which since September 2014 has had an interconnector with Ukraine. The summit took place at a time when Ukraine is lobbying its Western allies to punish Russia for what it says is Moscow's attempt to use gas supplies as a weapon against Europe. Europe is struggling to cope with surging energy prices, and EU leaders from top countries turn out to work for Vladimir Putin's Gazprom. The EU has yet to certify the Nord Stream 2 pipeline that will deprive Ukraine of €3 billion of revenue from the transit of Russian gas and will increase the risk of an attack by the Russian military. The 2,118 new cases of coronavirus infection is the highest daily number of new infections since May. In the past 24 hours, 49 patients have died. The number of flu cases is also increasing. Can you tell the difference between COVID-19 and flu? And how can you protect yourself from becoming ill? The National Institute of Public Health reported that there were nearly 370,000 cases and suspected cases of influenza in September, 180,000 more than in 2020. We are now in the flu season, the season of RSV infections. At the moment, we are recording 17,000 infections a day from the flu alone. However, fewer than 2,000 people are infected with COVID. You can see that influenza carries a higher risk. In parallel with the increases in flu cases, the number of new COVID-19 infections is growing. Virologists warn that diseases can develop in the body simultaneously. Therefore, to protect people from infection, doctors recommend vaccination. People who get vaccinated against COVID should also get a flu vaccination. If someone is undergoing a mild vaccination, they can do this along with a vaccination for COVID. COVID-19 and influenza are diseases that mainly attack the respiratory system, and the symptoms are very similar, so to verify the infection, it is best to go to a swab point. With very severe flu, you can get confused and say it's COVID. The symptoms are similar, but it is the test result that decides. The highest number of infections and deaths from COVID-19 in Poland, and consequently the highest number of occupied hospital beds, is in the eastern provinces. As doctors suggest, this is due to low vaccination rates there. Nutritionists and athletes point out that our immunity is affected not only by a healthy diet, but also by an adequate amount of sleep and physical activity. That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.